Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Joe Kvedar, Director, Center for Connected Health, Partners Healthcare.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that warm welcome. This morning, I want to ponder a question with you. Can you be your own doctor? I'm not talking about for diagnostics and really not even for forming a therapeutic plan. We can leave those two for a different day. They're interesting to talk about, but rather in the prevention and management of chronic illness, which, as you just heard, accounts from somewhere between 50 and 70% of healthcare costs in this country. I think we can, and I want to make that case to you this morning. Really, what's different now is we have three colliding trends that are very interesting in this regard and create the opportunity for us to really manage our own chronic illnesses and prevent them. The first one is about data and how much data is now available to all of us, or about all of us rather. And of course we know this. I'm going to make a lot of analogies this morning in the online shopping industry because it's a reality check that what I'm talking about isn't pure a fantasy, that in the world of online shopping we all have had this experience. As you all know, lots and lots of data, I say digital breadcrumbs, about you are collected every time you go online. So data is being collected about you, both in your online and browsing and from your mobile device. Mobile phone companies now sell this data regularly on a zip code basis about you and about your likes and dislikes. And in healthcare, it just means tracking things like blood pressure, weight, step counts, glucose. All of these now are available. They're all wireless. All the data are available to get into the cloud. The APIs are relatively open. So there's this new world of having all of this data available. Now at the Center for Connected Health, we've been thinking about that for some time, and we were on the early stage of working on getting that data out of those sensors and getting into the cloud. We worked on that for many years, and we came up with this concept of feedback loops, which you see pictured here on the right. And feedback loops are very powerful. I don't know if you've had, I bet all of you have had this experience. I had it yesterday. I was driving up to visit someone in La Jolla, and I pass on the road a sign that shows the speed limit and then this flashing sign on top of it telling me how fast I'm driving. I'm sure you've all had that experience. And most people slow down. It's a curious phenomenon, but that's a feedback loop, and that's how they work. When they are initially put in front of you, they change behavior. And that can be you monitoring your activity. Those of you who have, but a lot of people in this room have used activity monitors. You change your activity level. You understand your goals differently. You can achieve goals and quantify them. It could be your blood pressure, what have you. So feedback loops become very important. The problem then is that only about, and again, I bet most of you are in this percentage, but only about 5 to 10% of the population are really motivated enough to improve their health based on the feedback loop alone. And we see this because we take care of all kinds of patients with all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of psychology. And believe me, most people are not that quantitative or that motivated by the feedback loop alone. So that leads me to the second trend, which is pictured here on the left. Now, these are sliders. It's meant to illustrate that we're all motivated by different things, and our goal should be to understand what's unique about each one of us and then craft a motivational plan for that. And it links back to those data that I was talking about a minute ago. And again, going back to the online shopping industry, they've figured out how to do this because guess what? When we go online, we all get a different browsing experience, and it's designed to change our behavior, i.e., to get us to push the buy button. So this can be done. Can we transfer it to healthcare? Remains an open question. I'll show you an example in a minute of something we're doing at our center, which leads me to believe that we can. But that's that. And frankly, today, the way we deal with that left-hand part of the slide is with human beings, pharmacists, nurses, looking at these feedback loops and coaching patients about them. And that's very powerful, and it works. We've had great results in heart failure, diabetes, hypertension, powerful results. But we have to decide, can we extend it beyond that basic psychology of knowing that a nurse in your doctor's practice is watching your data? And we think we can. So trend number 2 is taking all those data in and then unique messaging to you about them designed to motivate you to do something. And trend number 3, which is equally exciting, is the genetic piece. That's really an anchor to the whole thing. If I know your genetic risk, then the whole targeting gets completely changed. And of course now, 23andMe is about $99. Whole genome sequence is about $1,000. It's really coming into focus that we're going to have these tools available to us on a regular basis. And I want to tell you a story that brings all of this into focus, which is, again, a present story. Remember the quote, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. This is an example of that. So this is Dr. Mike Snyder. He works in Stanford, just north of here. He's the chair of genetics, a maven in personalized medicine. And a few years ago, before it was really trendy to do so, he had his lab folks sequence his own genome, and you come up with something like this. It's called a riskogram. The way this reads is the lozenges are the risk at the general population level for any given condition. If there's a black line to the left, that means that your protagonist is at less risk. And if there's a brown line to the right, your protagonist is at greater risk. And I've circled diabetes because it's a story about type 2 diabetes. And you can see that Dr. Snyder's at particularly significant risk for that. Oddly enough, if you go about 5 lines down, you'll see obesity, and he's at less risk than the general population for that. So this is an odd genotype, and I'm sure, although I don't know the man, I'm sure it was surprising to him and a little bit unsettling, shall we say, to know you're at risk for this condition when you hadn't planned on it. So what would you do? Well, he, being a quantitative guy, started tracking his glucose. And this graph is fasting glucose data over a couple of years. On the top, what you see is hemoglobin A1C data for a part of this time. We'll come back to that. But for the first year or so, he's tracking fasting glucose, knowing he's at risk for diabetes, and again, employing a connected health intervention, and nothing's happening, and then it spikes. And you can see between day 300 or so and 360, he goes into frank type 2 diabetes, fasting sugars in the 150 range, hemoglobin A1C almost 7. He's type 2 diabetic. Now, I would just pause for a second and ask you to reflect on that, because I think it's the first time in history you see this kind of a graph. People walk around this planet with prediabetes for years not knowing it, accumulating all of the bad downstream health consequences because we don't have any way of singling them out. I promise you that if anyone here who doesn't have diabetes starts tracking their own blood sugar, people will start thinking you might need to see a therapist. It's not a normal thing for people to do. But here he's doing it, and he watches himself develop diabetes, which is really powerful. And then based on some more connected health interventions, activity monitoring, dietary monitoring, he turns it around. And you can see at the end, it's a happy story. He's back down to normal range, has reversed the process of this condition, essentially put it into remission. And now he knows he's got to manage his lifestyle and diabetes in order to prevent it from coming back again. So that's powerful. Now, it doesn't just extend to diabetes. There are 5 obesogenic genotypes. Think about if we knew this about you in utero and could start to craft plans so that you never got to that stage. Who wants to be obese? So there's a lot of potential in marrying these phenotypic data, these connected health data, and these genetic data. And as I said, the third component is getting the messaging right. And that's the story that I want to tell you now. This is work that we're currently doing at our center. And it involves, again, type 2 diabetics. This is a clinical trial, so I don't have, it's in process, so I don't have a lot of final data on it. I have one anecdote that I want to tell you to illustrate how we're thinking about this. And this really is illustrative of our research direction for the next several years. Because as I said before, when we get to those feedback loops, we need to find ways to keep people engaged in them, and we think that we can automate some of that messaging to do so. So what we do here is we collect 3 kinds of data. Again, we have motivational data. We're asking these people to fill out a short survey, helping us understand where they are in their motivational journey to change their behavior. We're using the trans-theoretical model. There are many. We're not particularly married to any one, but this one was designed in that way. And then once or twice a month during the trial, we can message them outbound with a text message, asking them 1 or 2 of those same questions to calibrate. Have they actually changed their stage of motivational learning and motivation? So that's that variable. The second variable is ongoing connected health data, step counts in this case, activity monitoring. Tom Blackadar's here. We use his device for this particular trial, the FitLinks device, and it brings us continuous wear and forget sensing about the person's activity. So we can map their actual activity to what they said they were motivated to do. Interesting sidebar, in the beginning usually they're off. People say they're more active than they actually are. Probably that's no surprise. The third is their practice location. And we just want to make sure we know where they live, where their doctor is, so that we don't message things that are geographically inappropriate. Twice a day, we take all that and we put it into an algorithm, and twice a day we're sending out customized motivational messages to these individuals. And here's an example of one fellow's results. Like I said, it's anecdotal at this point. But you can see in January he's in contemplation mode. Those are his step counts. In February, he's moved up, so his step counts are going in the right direction. Now, the March graph is off on the y-axis is truncated to get it all into this, so it's actually more dramatic even than it looks. So going through the stages nicely, his step count's going up through the process, a great success story, and we hope to see more like this. Usually when we do these interventions, we find that they go flat for most of the study. This is the first time we've done one where the actual progress is going up, and we think that's because we're continuing to keep these people engaged with fresh, relevant messaging. And as I said, we've automated it. So imagine now if we could do that for everyone, all of you. Know your genetic risk, track your motivational state, and of course we'd have all that phenotypic data that we talked about coming in about you as well. And it would look like this. We know your motivational level. We know where you are on your healthcare journey at this time. We know all those surrounding challenges you're dealing with because we can either ask you or we can track it. We know what you're doing, where your health data is at any given point in time. And of course, we bound it all, as I illustrated, through your genetic risk. Putting that through an analytic engine, and again, giving you this ongoing health coaching, motivational messaging to keep you engaged over your lifetime. So there's hints that we can do this. The technology, as Rob said, is there. We have some examples. We're just starting to work in this area, and it's very exciting. But think about the opportunity to knock back some of that 50 or 70% of healthcare costs just by making you your own doctor in the context of chronic illness prevention and management. Thanks very much.